You went to your job, and the first thing you heard was some old filthy, steamy joke. You wanted to get away, but before you could get away from it, it hit you right in the ear. It got you. It just got you. He done said it. You didn't know it was coming, but he said it. And it went right into your mind, that filth. You heard it. The words are still ringing and reverberating in your head. There it is. It's there. Then on the way home, you see, you can't help it. There they are, walking around out there with those short shorts on, both the men and the women. Strange people. And you know what they're all about, but you couldn't turn your head. You saw it. All right? When you got home, after you slogged your way through all that filth, you heard all that garbage, what's the first thing you'd want to do if actually it was filth on you, on your body, physically? What would be the first thing you'd want to do? Yes, you'd want to take a bath once a month. Do you take a bath every memorial? You see my point, don't you? God's word is able to clean us up spiritually. And anybody who doesn't engage in personal study, he's going to be tainted. He's going to be tainted. He's going to be unclean. So keep yourselves clean, brothers, by a good, firm, positive personal study schedule. Work on that thing, because that will help us to remain clean. Another thing that will help us to remain clean is our meetings. Our meetings are that which incite to love and fine works. They urge you onward. They help you to associate with people who are talking constantly about clean ideas, clean works, the clean, holy God. So the meetings will play a large role in helping us to stay clean from the world's defilements. And then the Holy Spirit needs an outlet. That's where the field service comes in. When you are constantly engaged in the field service, not only do you tell people don't steal, but you tell yourself don't steal. So it doesn't matter whether they listen to you or not. You listen to you. You tell people don't commit adultery. You tell yourself don't commit adultery. You tell people don't fornicate. You tell yourself don't fornicate. So field service not only is good for the public, but it's also good for you. If they never listen to you, you listen to yourself. And that way, as you go out in the field, you'll remain clean. It's God's provision for us, brothers. So it's more than just talking to people. It's helping yourself, because repetition is the mother of retention, and that helps us to go out in the field service. That's important to us. And all of it would be mechanical without prayer. We need to pray to our Almighty God, Jehovah. Our knees should be rubbed bare, as it were, as we seek his assistance, because the powers against us, shoving and pushing us into this pool of filth, these are superhuman powers. They're not just men that we have to deal with. We have to deal with the demons as well. And we have to pray to get the kind of help that we need to fight these foes who are trying to drag us off into this filth. And finally, there is the hope ahead. If you ever lose your hope, if you stop thinking about the new order, stop seeing it, and you start thinking about what's in front of you, then you lose. You'll lose. You'll misstep, and you'll be right back into the filth. So pay attention to how you feel about the future. Feel strongly about the new order. Keep up your faith in it. We must never become acclimatized or used to the filth of Satan's world. Like the righteous man Lot, we must feel pained by it. Never get used to it. Always feel pained by it. So therefore, brothers, let us fight to remain clean. Through the study of the purifying word, by attendance at our wholesome meetings, by our zeal for the strong ministry and faith in our God and prayer to our holy God, then, brothers, we will live to see all the earth sparkling with uncommon brilliance as we all stand in our own whitewashed robes to God's unspeakable glory and to our unspeakable joy forever in God's clean, undefiled new order of things.
Brother Johnson, all 180 of us truly appreciated that warm, enthusiastic talk. We really appreciate that. The information that you delivered to us was much appreciated. This is not our only meeting. First of all, next week we can come back here and listen to another timely discourse.
Well, first of all, brothers, I want to tell you that this has been a very beautiful week for us. We started out on Tuesday. We had 139 of us sitting here, all enjoying ourselves together at Jehovah's table, being spiritually fed. And then some followed us all around, and we went all around, and we were more than spiritually fed. We were fed otherwise. That's the hard part to deal with. And we want to just tell you how much we really appreciate your goodness. And what I think about most of all is the spiritual good times we had together at the meetings for service. After we had the meal, we'd go over a few ideas at the meetings for service. And then in the mornings, we came here, and then Saturday, for example, we had over 70 of you finally who were out in the field service in strong numbers. And all of this is a testimony about how we feel towards our God, Jehovah. And my wife and I just want to tell you, thank you so much for all of your kindness and your hospitality. So if we didn't get a chance to say it to you personally, we're saying it aloud now, that we really deeply appreciate all the good things that you've done. Now, all of us, brothers, according to Jesus' words, all of us are builders. And the fact of the matter is, it has nothing to do with whether or not you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. If you are, okay. If you're not one of Jehovah's Witnesses, it doesn't matter. You're still a builder. All of us are builders. And you're building, you're either building something that's temporary or you're building something that's permanent. You're either building something that will last you for a little while, for the here and the now, that will leave you unhappy now and devastated later, or you're building something that will stand the crisis and take test and give courage and comfort now and last forever later. Now the question is, what are you building? And how can Jesus say that we are such builders? What is at the heart and the substance of this matter? What is this building work that he spoke of? Well, if you take a look at his memorable words in the Sermon on the Mount, and especially the conclusion of those words, here is where he explains the idea of building. Now, let me make one thing clear before I read this verse. The minute that I read this verse, I don't care who you are, how much you know or how much you don't know about the Bible, the minute that I read this verse, you are going to, for a certainty, become a builder. Now, whether you've been a builder or not, up to this point, the minute this verse is read, it's going to automatically make you a builder. Listen to what he says in Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 7. Here's what he says. Therefore, everyone that hears these sayings of mine and does them will be likened to a discreet man who built his house upon the rock mass. Did you hear that? Did you hear that saying of Jesus Christ? All right. If you heard it, then that automatically now makes you a builder. If you weren't before you came, you are now. Because he says, everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does them will be likened to a discreet man who built his house upon the rock mass. Now, as the rest of the verses continue, you're either one kind or another, because it says, and the rain poured down, and the floods came, and the winds blew and lashed against that house, but it did not cave in, for it had been founded upon the rock mass. Furthermore, everyone hearing these sayings of mine and not doing them will be likened to a foolish man who built his house upon the sand. And the rain poured down, and the floods came, and the winds blew and struck against that house, and it caved in, and its collapse was great. So now all of you are builders. You're either building something that's permanent and that will last forever, or you're building a lean-to shack that will blow away in the winds and storms of trial and tribulation. One way or the other, we're all builders. The minute that you heard those words, now we're responsible for those words, and that's when you have begun to construct your house. What did Jesus mean when he says the man who builds on the rock mass? He didn't say rock, but he said rock mass. What did he mean by saying that he was a discreet man? And what is this rock mass that Jesus is talking about? Well, such a person who builds on a rock mass is a discerning person. He is a person who shows good judgment, good insight. It means that he has built his lifestyle, his way of doing things, his manner, his habits, his thoughts, his ambitions, his motivations are all based on those sayings of Jesus Christ. Well, what sayings? Well, it's all the sayings that are in that Sermon on the Mount, particularly, and we'll talk about it more in a few minutes. But the point is, Jesus is saying that if you build your life or your pattern of life or your motivations or your heart's feelings and your thoughts are guided by, prompted by those sayings, then you're building a house that's solid on a rock mass. Like, for example, a cliff, a mountain, or a large rock shelf, not on a stone or a pebble, but on a rock mass, something that's hefty, solid. It means that this person has worked hard to be obedient to Jesus Christ, because he says the one that does them, that's the person that builds such a house. He's a smart man who builds a house like that. And the fact of the matter is that all of us have to build a house. We're going to build one, as you have already heard. You've already noted these sayings. So you're going to build a house, so why not build something that'll last, something that will do you some good, that will protect, provide security, comfort, safety, happiness, and joy for us. Why build a lean-to shack, something that will cause you to shiver in the rain and freeze and to be blown away? Why build something like that? Well, now, how do you build on Jesus' words? How do you build on those sayings? Well, those sayings can be found in the 5th through the 7th chapter of Matthew. We won't have a chance to read all of those sayings. But that sermon is complete. It deals with every aspect of human service, of Christian service, I should say. It deals with all the aspects of it. Oh, it doesn't go into a long, drawn-out saying and expression, but it's there. It's there. Everything that you need to serve Jehovah God and to have the right attitude toward God, it's all there in that Sermon on the Mount. That's why if you build your life on it, it'll do something good for you. It'll leave your house standing. How to please God, for example. How to be happy. A complete expression there. You want to be happy? All right, it's all there. How to get along with others. How to pray. How to have the proper view toward material things. Your Christian responsibility as a minister, and the list goes on. It's all there in those short words that are found in the Sermon on the Mount. Now, just to give you an example of what we're talking about, let's take preaching and conduct. Just preaching and conduct. What is said in the Sermon on the Mount about preaching and conduct? Jesus says, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. Just in those expressions alone, your preaching and your conduct are encompassed. What about your purpose in life? In Matthew 6:33, he said, seek first the kingdom. In other words, a person who builds his life on that saying, he's building his life and his house on a rock mass. What about your spiritual condition? He said, happy are those hungering and thirsting for righteousness. Happy are those conscious of their spiritual need. If you build your life on that, then it's going to be solid. Do you study? Do you take opportunities and privileges of study seriously? Do you come here to the meetings anxious and ready and boiling over with enthusiasm to participate? Brothers, I want to encourage you to work on that. I noticed the other night, I looked at some of the children, we had a question, and I see some of the little ones are hesitant, and I know then that the parents are not studying with them like they should. I see the hesitancy of some putting their hands up, and I know that they haven't prepared like they should. Jesus says, you're either building your house on the rock mass by hungering and thirsting and being conscious of your spiritual need, or you're building your house on the sand. It's got to be one way or the other. What about your attitude? That's dealt with too in that Sermon on the Mount. He said, continue to love your enemies. Now that's hard to do, but that's what he said to do. So if you love your enemies, you know you got to love your brothers. If you have to love your enemies with his wickedness and evilness, why can't we love our brothers with their shortcomings? Why can't we do that? See, so it has a lot to do with your attitude. He says if you build your house or your personality on that, then you're a solid person. He says, if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Now, the other night we discussed that Sermon on the Mount. And it should not be forgotten, brothers, that Jesus was talking primarily to his disciples, because it was his disciples that he gathered up close to him, first of all. This was a well thought out sermon, and it was all about what a servant of God should do. That's why it was spoken about the ministry, fornication, adultery, all aspects of Christian living and behavior were covered, so that those disciples got a service talk that was out of this world, so to speak, and it prepared them for years to come to properly serve God and to build their house, their personality, their spirituality on something that was solid. And our houses, if they're going to stand, they must stand on not some of those sayings, but they must be built on all those sayings that are in that Sermon on the Mount. If you think about it very strongly, the rest of the Bible is just an extension of the Sermon on the Mount. Try as you will, and you'll not get anything different than what's in that Sermon on the Mount. What Paul said, all what Peter said, all of those are just different aspects of that sermon. It's just an extension of that sermon. So yes, that is a complete expression of Jesus Christ. And as long as this system lasts, we are going to have to face the winds. Such storms are going to continue. What are these winds that will blow and lash? Not lap, but lash the house. Not wind or flood, but winds and floods. What are these things? These things are the everyday trials and tribulations, adversities, and the persecutions that can occur in a Christian's life. All who build are going to go through these things. More than once. Not sometime, but frequently. There will not be a flood, but there will be floods. There will not be a wind, but there are going to be winds. Now let me illustrate how the winds and the floods can come and come suddenly in a Christian's life and test the metal of his house. Here's a sister, she's in the congregation. She's got a dedicated husband. She's doing quite well. She's serving God. She's happy. She's got a good man. He works hard. He serves God. And everything is just going just fine. He's a responsible person in the congregation. Both of them are well thought of. And then the man gets sick. And when the winds subside, the man is dead. He's gone, blown away, taken by the adversities and the evils of death. Now this wind has hit this dear sister's house. Whereas she was safe and secure before, now she finds herself without a man who makes decisions. She still has life to her. She still has strength in her body. She still has hopes and desires, but now she has no husband. All the bills have to be paid. All these other matters that he took care of, now she's got to take care of them. The children have to be disciplined if there are any children in the house. And all of a sudden, these winds are hitting her from left and right. What about her house now? Is it going to stand? It depends. It depends. Did she build her house on the sayings of Jesus Christ? Did she put first the kingdom? Was she a deeply spiritual person? And did she work hard to base her house on the rock mass of the sayings of Christ? The very foundation and the fundamentals of Christianity. Well, if she did that, yes, she'll feel the wind and she'll feel the flood, but the house will stand. That's the key thing. The house will stand. The winds come back again. Her husband is dead. And now another strong gale blows against her house, and her son is disobedient and rebellious. He no longer wants to serve God. Here's another wind. It's another flood. He thumbs his nose up against God. He goes out. He wants to do the wrong thing. And in a year or two later, she discovers the poor kid now. He has AIDS, and he's brought back to the door in a crumpled heap. The winds are blowing. Now, how is her house going to stand? See, the brothers, these winds can come against anybody, anytime, anywhere, and in any manner. But a real Christian who builds his house upon spirituality, he takes the time to study and to dig down deep. Let's go to the parallel sermon. Luke gives us a parallel. See, Jesus said in Matthew, let's go to Luke chapter 6. I want you to look at the parallel. Chapter 6 and verse 47. It says, "Everyone that comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you whom he is like. He is like a man building a house." And notice, he puts a little different emphasis. He says, he is a man building a house who dug and went down deep. Now, in Matthew's account, the idea was putting it on a huge rock. But in this account, the idea is the effort, digging down deep so that it is well established. So what are we talking about here? We're not talking about some casual, lazy, peripheral like basing ourselves on the words of Jesus Christ, but we're talking about something that's deep. We're not talking about something that's on the surface. We're talking about really basing our lives in a very deep, heartfelt manner on the words of Jesus Christ. Because the winds are going to blow, brothers. Something is going to happen to you. I don't care who you are. You're going to get sick. Somebody's going to die. Somebody else is going to get sick. And the winds are going to hit your house. Now, ordinarily, just looking at a house, you can't tell what the superstructure of that thing is. But the wind will. The floods will. All houses may look alike until the wind comes and the floods come. Just looking at a Christian's house, you just can't tell by looking at him on the outside whether or not he has actually and honestly molded and based his life on the principles and the sayings of Jesus Christ. You just can't tell by looking at a person. But the winds can tell. And they'll come and they'll expose his house. Now, a person who has the right building, his house will not collapse. He'll not fail in his faith. He'll not collapse in a heap upon himself, bemoaning and lamenting the trial and tribulation. He'll meet it head on, he'll deal with it, and he'll survive. That's when a person has a right foundation. He dug down deep, and he based his life on Jesus' words. To show you how strong winds can be, let me tell you something about what happened just this past fall. It was in the newspaper where the winds blew through Brandon, Mississippi. There were 3 boys in a house, a father and his a son and two young friends of his, and the father. The wind blew through that little town of Brandon, which, by the way, was no more than about 30 or 40 miles from where we used to serve in Jackson, Mississippi. The wind came through that town, took the roof off of that house, snatched those 4 people out of that house, and slammed them on the ground a quarter of a mile down the road. Now imagine the wind picking you up and blowing you down to Empire Boulevard somewhere. What are you going to look like when you hit the ground? How are you going to hit the ground? Well, now, they were dead. They were dead when it was all over with. Well, now, that wind that we're talking about, the adversities of life, can come just as suddenly against us. And Jesus said that a man who doesn't build right, he says he's a fool. That's what he said. He can be likened to a foolish man. Why so? Well, let's take a look at why he would be a fool. He's a fool, first of all, because he tries to hide what he is. He's building all right. He's got a house. But he's foolish because he goes right down there and builds that thing where? On the sand. Now, where do you usually find sand? On the beach. That's where usually sand is, on the beach. On the beach, what do you have? Water. Water. So it may look all right, but it's not all right. And when the wind hit his house, it'll expose him for being the false person that he really is. He may look like he's a dedicated servant of God. He may look like a Christian. But when he has a trial and a tribulation, you'll see where he runs and what he does and how he ducks and how he handles himself. And you'll see his little house collapse. And it will be great because it might go to a point where he may not be able to recover. That's the sad part about it. That's why the collapse is great. He's also foolish because he was at the meetings and he heard the sayings, but he didn't do anything about it. Now, what can that be likened to? Imagine a man who has to build a house. Everybody's got to build one. You got to have safety and security. But here, a man, he has to build a house, and a truck drives up to his door. And all the choice materials that you can have, from the first board to the last nail and the shingles on the roof, everything that you need to build that house is on that truck. Choice materials, top grade stuff. The windows, the doors, the wiring, the plumbing, everything is needed. It's unloaded at a person's door. And out of the truck comes a wise director of the works. You don't need to know much of anything. Here comes a wise director of the works. There's the precious materials for the house. Foremen are supplied. And all you got to do is listen to what they say and just pick up the boards and just put the thing up there. That's all you got to do. You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to do anything. Just take the stuff, and it's being given to you, and the wise director of the works is given to you. And a person goes away and builds a shack. Now, wouldn't he be foolish? Wouldn't he be foolish? And isn't it true that the words of Jesus Christ are like those choice timbers? And isn't it true that Jesus Christ has provided a faithful and discreet slave, like a wise director of the works, telling you how to put the boards together? You don't have to pay for anything. Just do what you're told. And isn't it true that he has provided elders, ministerial servants, all these helpers, and all you got to do is just get out there and participate. Just pick up a board. And then for a person to go away and build a shack, he would indeed be foolish. Being hard-headed, being indifferent, choice material, and then he go and get some stuff out the garbage and build him some kind of lean-to cardboard thing that you see up under these bridges down around here in Brooklyn. That would be foolish. So brothers, don't do that. Put forth the effort. Build right. Don't build on the sand. These persons who are bad builders, they're always flirting with trouble. Instead of doing what Jesus said, they listen to bad music. Instead of having the right heart attitude, they have a bad motive. Instead of avoiding the things that are mentioned in Matthew 7, they have bad morals. They're always into things. They're always shaky. They're like the man in James' illustration in James chapter 1. Let's turn there. James describes this kind of person as a thoughtless person. He's thoughtless and he's cheating no one but himself, because he's the one that's got to live in that shack. James chapter 1 and verse 23. It says, if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, this one is like a man looking at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself, and off he goes, and immediately forgets what sort of man he is. Now, why does a man look in the mirror? Well, now, an honest man looks in the mirror to see what's wrong with him, because you're not all that pretty. You know something is wrong with you. That's why you go look in the mirror. Now, a vain man goes to see how cute he is. But an honest man looks in there, and an honest woman looks in there to see what's wrong with you. What's wrong? Is this my hair? Is it my, what's it? So you want to see what's wrong with you. Well, why do you want to see what's wrong with you? Because you intend to fix it. That's the only reason why you look. If a hair is out of place, you intend to fix it, right? That's why you looked. Now, wouldn't a person be foolish, look in the mirror, see he's got something wrong with him, and then turn right away and forget what he looked like? That's why he's cheating no one but himself. Now, frankly speaking, brothers, the winds are going to continue to blow, and the floods are going to come. Now, our houses are not perfect. We try to build and base them on the words of Jesus Christ and on the words of God. But let's be honest, if you have that much wind and that many floods, anybody's house can spring a leak. It can happen to you. Even a good house can spring a leak. A shingle can blow off a roof. A crack can be in the wall. Something can happen to the house. But for God's sake, fix the thing. Don't let your house be blown down for want of a nail, or because you don't want to get up there and fix a flapping shingle, or you see a crack in the wall of your personality and you let the water keep pouring into that thing until there's a gaping hole and then your house is gone. Fix it. If you know that you're not studying like you should, fix it. If you know that you're not engaging in the field service as you should, fix that. If you know that you're not as loving as you should, then repair that. If you're critical, then put the flap down on that shingle. If you're having other problems, your windows are out of kilter, well, now the floods are going to come. You know they're going to come. And you see the thing leaking. Fix it. Don't be like that man who looks at himself in the mirror and then go away and forget what he looks like. You see the rain dripping in your house. You see water seeping in through the cracks. See what the source of it is and then fix it so that your house won't blow down. Take the time, take the effort, make the energy so that you can serve Jehovah God completely. Dig and go down deep because your life depends on it. We have some who are always on the edge of organizational instruction. Instead of them trying to figure out how they can do something, they figure out how they can avoid it and how they can disobey. Well, Jesus says they're foolish persons because the wind is going to find them out. It's going to find them out. It's just like an individual who got sick, and there they were, disfellowshipped. They didn't want to listen to the elders. The elder says, quit dipping that snuff. Well, they couldn't do it. And they'd go by, are you through dipping the snuff? You want to come back? No, I'm still dipping it. I want to do this. And then the wind blew. The wind blew, and when it subsided, it left her with a terrible, terrible case of pneumonia. And then in the waning days, now she wanted to be reinstated in God's congregation. There was another situation not far. Person wanted to smoke cigarettes rather than to be obedient to God and his word. Are you going to stop smoking? No, I ain't going to stop. Y'all do what you got to do. I'll do what I got to do. Well, you realize you're going to be disfellowship, don't you? Yeah, I know it. Do what you got to do. All right, well, the person is disfellowshipped. She said, maybe when I come back, maybe I'll have it together. I says, I might not see you when I come back. I might not get back to see you. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, she had a stroke. 2 weeks later, she had a stroke. And when the winds got through blowing, she couldn't even speak to say, I'm sorry. She couldn't even ask with her mouth, I wanted to be back. And she died. She died. The winds will find you out. The floods will seek you out. So when the winds blow and the floods come, brothers, take the time to preach. Take the time to study with your families. Take the time to engage in the service. Take the time to come to your meetings and put your heart and your faith and your energy here, because this is where you're going to be fed. Don't do it casually or hypocritically, but sincerely and with earnestness. If you do that, then when the violent, angry winds of Armageddon blow and the flash floods of death and destruction hit this system of things, your little house will stand. It will stand in the calm, quiet clearing and setting of paradise earth. It will stand because you built it right. You built it to last. So build your life and your heart's ambitions and your motivations on the words of Christ, and you'll be building on a rock, and you'll last, and your house will last. Well, brothers, it's been a pleasure serving you. Now we want to get ready for our field service. At about 10 minutes from now, we'll meet down to the front of the Kingdom Hall. We'll get our groups together and we'll get going. But now let's all stand. We'll sing a song to Jehovah's praise. And that's song number